On a lonely mountain along the border of Cambodia and Thailand stands a temple carved from the bones of the earth, Preah Vihear. For 1,000 years it watched over jungles and clouds, a relic of the Khmer Empire's devotion to the gods. But in the 20th century, the sacred stones became a weapon, a wound, and a battleground. Two nations, born from the same soil and shadowed by the same history, would draw their lines in blood. What began as a question of heritage became a war of pride. Soldiers dug trenches beneath the carvings of Vishnu and Shiva. Artillery thundered where once monks chanted. The world barely noticed, yet for those who fought, the mountain was everything, a symbol of sovereignty, of identity, of ghosts refusing to rest. Tonight we climb that mountain. We walk through the mist between Cambodia and Thailand, between past and present, between faith and fire. This is the story of the war nobody talks about, where history itself became the battlefield. The temple rises like a crown upon the edge of the world. Preah Vihear, a 1,000-year-old monument built atop a cliff that plunges into the jungles of northern Cambodia. The wind here never sleeps. It howls through broken doorways and across weathered carvings of gods long forgotten. Below, the border winds like a scar, invisible to the eye but deep within the earth's memory. To the ancients, this mountain was sacred ground, a place where heaven met the soil. But for the living, it would become a place of dispute, of pride, and of blood. Centuries ago, when the Khmer Empire stretched across most of Southeast Asia, the temple was not a frontier, but a center, a holy summit dedicated to Shiva, the Lord of the Mountain. Pilgrims climbed its steep stairways bearing offerings of flowers, rice, and smoke. Kings sent architects to carve visions of heaven into its sandstone walls. For generations, the temple stood in peace, gazing down upon a land without borders. But time is cruel. Empires fall, kingdoms rise, and sacred stones become political prizes. By the late 19th century, the colonial powers had arrived, carving Southeast Asia into maps with rulers and ink. France claimed Cambodia as part of its Indo-Chinese empire. To the west, Siam, the kingdom that would become Thailand, played a delicate game, trading territory for survival. Between these powers, the ancient temple found itself caught in the shifting geometry of imperial ambition. French surveyors, unfamiliar with the terrain, drew boundaries that placed Preah Vihear within Cambodian territory. Siamese officials protested, but the ink dried and the lines were made law. The mountain temple, once belonging to no one but the gods, now belonged to two nations that did not yet understand how deeply they would bleed for it. Decades passed, and the modern world arrived. Thailand embraced modernization, Cambodia emerged slowly from colonial shadow. But the border remained uncertain, a thread of tension stretching across the mountains. In 1954, when French forces withdrew from Indochina, Thai troops moved into Preah Vihear and raised their flag over the temple. To them, it was not conquest but reclamation, the return of an ancestral site. To Cambodia, it was desecration. Diplomacy failed, as it often does when pride takes the form of history. Cambodia appealed to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The hearings were tense, carried out in sterile rooms far from the jungle, but the stakes were ancient. Lawyers argued not just about maps and treaties, but about heritage, about identity. In 1962, the court delivered its verdict. The temple belonged to Cambodia. The news rippled through Phnom Penh like thunder. Crowds celebrated in the streets, while in Bangkok, anger simmered. Thailand withdrew its troops, but the wound did not close. For a time, peace held, or at least a silence. Cambodia descended into its own nightmares: civil war, the Khmer Rouge, genocide. During those dark years, Preah Vihear was forgotten by the world, its stairways overgrown, its courtyards echoing with ghosts. The mountain became a refuge for soldiers, then for the dead. Landmines replaced pilgrims. The temple that once connected heaven and earth became a watchtower in hell. When the Cold War thawed and Cambodia began to rebuild, the mountain returned to the world's attention. In 2008, Cambodia applied for Preah Vihear to be recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. A proud moment meant to heal the scars of war, but history is never so forgiving. Thailand protested, arguing that the surrounding land still belonged to them. The old border dispute reignited, fanned by nationalism on both sides. Words turned to rallies, rallies to gunfire. The mountain once again became a battlefield. Cambodian and Thai soldiers dug trenches among the ruins. They slept beside ancient carvings, rifles propped against the same stones that once held incense and prayer. Artillery shells whistled through the mist, exploding near sanctuaries that had survived 1,000 years of empires. The thunder of modern war echoed across the cliffs. Monks who had returned to care for the temple fled once more. The gods carved in stone watched as men fought beneath their gaze. Two nations divided by faith in the same history. Life on the border became a rhythm of uncertainty. Villagers on both sides fled their homes during the fighting, carrying what little they could. Schools emptied, markets closed, and fields fell silent. When the guns paused, both nations claimed victory. When they fired again, both claimed defense. Each bullet carried not just the weight of politics, but of centuries. The burden of pride passed from king to soldier, from monument to man. For the soldiers stationed at Preah Vihear, the war felt strangely personal. Many were young, their fathers once refugees of older wars. They spoke similar languages, ate similar food, and prayed to the same deities. Yet they faced each other across barbed wire, divided by a line drawn by foreign hands a century before. Some nights, when the rain came heavy and the fog swallowed the cliffs, both sides would fall silent, their radios off, listening to the same storm. There was no hatred in those moments, only exhaustion. The realization that they were guardians of ghosts. From Phnom Penh to Bangkok, politicians spoke of sovereignty, of honor, of defending national heritage. But the mountain cared for none of it. It had seen empires come and go. The carvings on its walls were fading, their gods eroded by wind and war. Yet in the quiet between battles, when the clouds lifted, one could still feel what the ancients must have felt. A strange holiness, a reminder that this place once belonged to the sky, not to men. By 2011, after several clashes and dozens of casualties, the dispute reached the international stage once more. The world looked briefly toward the mountain, then looked away. Peacekeepers were deployed, ceasefires signed, borders remarked. But the truth lingered like smoke. Neither nation would ever forget. Preah Vihear remained under Cambodian control, but the surrounding hills stayed contested, a landscape haunted by memory and nationalism. For those who live nearby today, life moves cautiously. Children play among rusted shells, monks return to rebuild shrines. The wind still whispers across the stones, carrying voices that once spoke Sanskrit, Thai, Khmer. Each nation tells its own version of the story, each one certain of its right. But perhaps the mountain itself holds the only truth, that nothing on this earth truly belongs to us. At dusk, when the sun sinks behind the jungle, the temple glows with a light both gentle and fierce. The carvings catch fire in the fading day, and for a moment, the border disappears. The land seems whole again, as it was before history began to draw its lines. Yet beneath that beauty lies the weight of centuries. Preah Vihear stands as both wound and wonder, proof that even sacred ground can bleed, when nations forget the difference between pride and peace. The war between Cambodia and Thailand was brief, but the silence that followed was long. And in that silence, the stones still remember. The rains returned before dawn, cloaking the cliffs of Preah Vihear in silver mist. Soldiers stirred from sleep beneath plastic sheets, their boots sunk deep in mud, rifles slick with moisture. The temple above them loomed like a ghost, its towers half swallowed by fog. Somewhere on the other side, across an invisible border, another group of men woke the same way, Thai soldiers peering through the mist toward the same sacred stones. Between them lay a no-man's land littered with shell craters and the bones of ancient gods. The war that flared here was small by the world's measure, yet to those who fought it, it was everything. It was fought not for oil or land rich in gold, but for stone. Weathered sandstone laid by the hands of ancestors, polished by the prayers of 1,000 years. It was fought for memory, for pride, for the right to say, "This is ours." The irony was as sharp as the cliffs themselves. Both sides claimed to be defending heritage that was, in truth, shared. When the first shots rang out in 2011, it was said to have begun by accident. A patrol stepping too far, a warning shot misheard, a nervous trigger pulled. But accidents are rare in places heavy with history. The artillery that followed was deliberate. The sky cracked with thunder and smoke rolled over the jungle canopy. Shells struck the upper terraces of the temple complex, shaking loose fragments of stone carved during the reign of Suryavarman I. The past was literally breaking apart beneath the weapons of the present. On the Cambodian side, soldiers took shelter behind the weathered balustrades, their faces lit by the orange pulse of explosions. Many of them were young, farmers' sons who had grown up in villages named for spirits and rivers, not maps and treaties. Their commanders spoke of defending the nation's soul. On the Thai side, similar words were spoken. They too believed they were protecting their heritage, that the mountain was theirs by right and by blood. Between bursts of gunfire came long, suffocating silences. In those moments, the sound of wind through the ruins returned, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and incense. Sometimes the soldiers could hear each other across the border, voices calling out, laughter breaking through the tension. Both sides spoke languages born of the same linguistic roots. They shared food, music, and gods, but none of that mattered once orders came down. In nearby villages, civilians fled once again, just as their parents and grandparents had during older wars. Families packed rice and photographs into woven baskets, walking barefoot through the mud toward safer ground. The elderly remembered other times, the wars of the Khmer Rouge, the Vietnamese invasion, the refugee camps that dotted the border for decades. For them, this was not a new story, only an old one, told again in a new generation's blood. International headlines called it a border skirmish, but for those living beneath the roar of artillery, it felt like the end of the world. Smoke rolled through the forests and the temple's ancient steps were scorched black. UNESCO officials condemned the damage. Soldiers on both sides blamed the other. Yet beneath the politics and anger, there was something deeper, a quiet desperation, as if both nations were trying to reclaim a fragment of identity lost in the shadow of empire and modernity. The mountain had become a mirror. Cambodia saw in it the glory of Angkor, proof that the Khmer people had once ruled the heart of Southeast Asia. Thailand saw in it the legacy of Siam, a reminder of sovereignty never conquered by the West. Each saw history as validation, not as connection. The temple, in its silence, seemed to mock them both. One Cambodian soldier later recalled the nights when fighting paused. He described sitting on the edge of the cliff, staring into the blackness where the Thai positions lay hidden by jungle. Sometimes he could hear monks chanting across the line, faint, low prayers drifting through the wind. He said it felt like hearing ghosts speak. Another Thai soldier told of watching the sunrise over the temple after a ceasefire. For a moment, he said, he forgot who the enemy was. By mid-2011, under pressure from the United Nations and ASEAN, a fragile ceasefire took hold. The guns went silent, though the air still smelled of smoke. Both armies withdrew a short distance from the ruins, leaving the mountains scarred but standing. The temple, battered but unbroken, stood once more in uneasy peace. Its walls bore the marks of bullets beside carvings of gods, the new and old scars blending into one story. When the rains came again, grass began to grow in the craters. Birds returned to the cliff face. Monks climbed the long stairways, sweeping the terraces where soldiers had once crouched with rifles. They lit incense before the altars, their chants rolling over the valley like waves. The smoke rose toward the clouds, offerings for the living and the dead alike. In Phnom Penh, Preah Vihear became a symbol of endurance. Politicians invoked it in speeches, schools taught its story as one of national pride. In Bangkok, the wound remained open, raw, with resentment and silence. Yet for ordinary people on both sides, life slowly resumed its rhythm. Farmers went back to their fields, traders reopened border markets, and the jungle began to erase the evidence of war. Time, relentless as ever, continued its quiet conquest, but memory does not fade so easily. The line drawn by colonial hands still cuts through the mountains, invisible yet sharp. Maps continue to differ. The soldiers who once stood guard beneath the temple's towers remember the smell of gunpowder and rain. Some returned home as heroes, others as names carved into memorial stones. And Preah Vihear endures. Older than all their wars, older even than the nations themselves. At dusk, the temple stands drenched in the colors of dying light. The sandstone glows red, then gold, then fades into shadow. The carvings of Shiva and Vishnu stare outward, their faces chipped but calm, as if they understand something humanity does not. The wind rises, carrying the songs of both nations together into the night. This was the war nobody talked about, not because it was small, but because it revealed too much. It showed how pride can blind kinship, how the ghosts of empire still whisper through modern borders, and how easily sacred ground can become a battlefield. It showed that history, when left unresolved, is never truly buried. Yet even amid the ruin, there is grace. The people who live near the mountain still climb to its summit to pray. They bring lotus flowers and incense, setting them before the same stones that once trembled beneath gunfire. They pray not for victory, but for peace, for the gods to forgive what men have done in their names. In the stillness of dawn, when the mist curls around the temple and the first birds begin to sing, Preah Vihear looks almost untouched. The scars of war lie hidden beneath moss and shadow. The earth remembers, but it forgives slowly. Above the valley, the temple stands again between nations. Not as a trophy, not as a fortress, but as a reminder. The border is still there, invisible and eternal. A line that divides and binds, but perhaps someday, when the echoes of war finally fade, the mountain will return to what it was meant to be. A bridge between worlds, between faiths, between the shared heartbeats of two peoples who once were one. Until next time, stay safe and see you in the next history.